Okay, we're recording. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Safety Academy. My name is Anthony Chamont from Tyndall Oliver. Everyone that is here received the notice that is up on my screen. My email address is here. If you have any questions about PDH forms, where to download them, I'll show on the screen where those are. There's a few questions on the chat about it. Dennis is our Academy coordinator. His email is in your invitation as well. Questions about upcoming topics and things of that nature go to him. And on the website that is here, on the registration link takes you to our Safety Academy webpage, which I'm about to bring up. It is part of the Tampa Bay Traffic Safety website, the local agency Traffic Safety Academy. We have the topic for today. It's listed here on the screen. Dennis will go into a little bit more depth. The webinars that we've done for this year, and further down is the location where all the presentations and the recordings are. The recording from last week's webinar and the actual presentation is here, and also the PDH forms in PDF and in Word format are located here. These two forms are also available on the pod or the handouts as part of the GoToWebinar application. I believe I've uploaded it there. If I haven't, then I will put it there so you can download it directly from there as well. With that, I'll hand it over to Dennis for his official intro of the Academy.
Good morning. Show my screen. Good morning. This is Dennis Sullivan, the FDOT Local Agency Traffic Safety Academy Coordinator and Consultant. And wanted to welcome you to the second webinar for the 2018 FDOT Local Agency Traffic Safety Academy. Today's safety webinar topic is titled The Update of the FHWA Proven Safety Countermeasures Initiative, and will be presented by Jeffrey Shaw, the PE out of Illinois, state of Illinois, highway engineer, and he's with the FHWA Office of Safety. And there will be poll questions for today's presentation. Also like to add about Jeffrey Shaw, Jeff, is that he's the Intersections Program Manager for the FHWA Office of Safety. And in this role, he manages programs, projects, and products of national interest that are intended to enhance intersection safety. And while he's based in Illinois, he's really working for the headquarters out of Washington, D.C. With that, I'd like to give you a brief introduction to the Academy. And if you've seen it before, you'll just have to bear with me. For those that are new, this is just an overview. But this is the FDOT Local Agency Traffic Safety Academy. It was established to provide information on safety-related issues to enhance your local safety program. We're in the 6th year of the Academy. And they normally are in a time frame of 10 a.m. to 12 p.m., usually on a Wednesday. And they're a minimum to 1 hour, but no more than 2 hours. And the length of a webinar will depend on the complexity of the topic. As I mentioned, today's webinar is updated the FHWA Proven Safety Countermeasures Initiative. And the other webinars for this year in the coming months will be out there. We're just kind of in a organizational mode right now, trying to get some things set up for us. But it will be there. We also offer AICP credits for those that are planners. And we also offer PDH for Florida PEs. And Anthony showed you how and where the form was for that. And also this is how it's sent out. And with that, this is my contact information. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Jeffrey Shaw.
All right. Thank you very much, Dennis. And thank you, Anthony. I will get the screen control here momentarily.
Yes.
Okay, let's see, screen. Okay. Does that look good, guys?
Yes, I see your presentation.
Okay, great. So thank you for inviting me to present today for the Local Agency Traffic Safety Academy. I appreciate this opportunity, and you know, I want to just say I'm very excited about the rollout of the new proven safety countermeasures. And so today what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk a little bit about what the initiative is all about, how it came about, and then spend the bulk of the presentation on the 6 new proven safety countermeasures. So first, to begin, for those of you who are new to this whole proven safety countermeasures initiative, just to walk you through a brief history of where this came from and why it exists. So this actually goes back 10 years. So back in 2008, what we now refer to as version 1.0 debuted. What happened was our Associate Administrator for Safety from Federal Highways issued a memo to our field offices basically requesting consideration and implementation of 9 treatments and strategies. And it was that memo that first coined the phrase proven safety countermeasures. We found that that first iteration of the initiative wound up resonating very well with state, tribal, and local road agencies. And so it became widely known throughout the traffic and safety engineering communities. And I think everybody appreciated that there was this very available and simple list of safety treatments that could be used right now today with confidence. And that confidence stemming from the fact that you know, it's really a partnership between FHWA and state DOTs and our local partners, and it was a consensus that these 9 proven safety countermeasures were underutilized, but would be worthwhile if they could be systemically applied. So that's where this whole thing came from. It was really envisioned as a means to boost systemic implementation of things that made our roads safer. And you know, the idea was to transcend the safety program and actually get these treatments as part of regular projects, no matter what the purpose of the scope was. So with that first initiative, we started tracking the progress. So this goes back to time before everyday counts and before other initiatives where we were doing a lot of tracking of progress. And we had a qualitative scale. We asked states, you know, how are you moving along on these? Not at all, or we apply it universally, and any stage in between. So we felt like measuring progress was a good thing. We did that for several years, and then in 2012, we updated the initiative. So we spent some time looking at how far we'd come with that first list of 9 countermeasures, and decided that of those original 9, there were 4 of them who had not quite yet reached that mature state. So we retained 4 of the original 9, we added 5 new ones, and continued to track progress, but we changed the way we were tracking progress. And we tried to link progress to whether it was a focus state, because we have the focus states in intersections, roadway departure, and pedestrians, and whether there was a strategic highway safety plan emphasis area related to that. That tracking effort actually proved to be a bit too complicated, and we still had some good, valuable feedback as a result of it, but we've decided that that's going to be something we're changing with this 3rd iteration. So now what has gotten us to where we're at today with this new rollout of version 3.0? In 2014, late 2014, FHWA formed working groups to review the initiative. And we had folks from our headquarters office, we had folks from different field offices across the country, from our research and development group, and from the resource center. So we had you know, really extensive representation from across our safety discipline, and sat down and said, first of all, let's evaluate the value of the initiative. Is it still working? Is it still providing what our partners want? Is it still providing value to our safety program efforts? And so we went back and we asked across the country, we asked every one of our division offices, get feedback from your states. We had conference calls, we had phone interviews, surveys, and the resounding answer was that the initiative is widely popular, that state and local partners feel that this is a good, established and valued brand, that when they go out to their city councils and county boards and they're meeting with the public, that having something that says the FHWA proven safety countermeasure helps them convince others to try something. And so they felt like this is a good thing and they wanted to see it continue. Internally, the consensus was to continue with the initiative. We heard from our safety engineers and safety specialists in the divisions that they really liked this because it gave them something concrete they could tackle with their state partners, and it gave everybody something to focus on and move forward together. So we said, all right, we're gonna make some minor tweaks to it, but otherwise we're going to continue the initiative. So that was the first part. The second part, where we convened another group, was to actually sit down and decide which countermeasures would be appropriate for an updated initiative. So with the second group, we formed, composed similarly of field, headquarters, research, and resource center. We identified 31 candidate countermeasures and strategies, and then eventually whittled that list down to the 6 that I'm going to talk about today. And that took some considerable effort because there's a lot of really good ideas out there in the safety universe. Not all of them obviously have the same degree of evaluation, and not all of them have crash modification factors. Not all of them have experience in different pockets of the country, and that's okay. But getting that list whittled down took a lot of work, and I want to recognize my counterparts across FHWA safety who participated in that. One more thing to say about the initiative, and this is language that first appeared in the second iteration, but that we just want to reaffirm as we go forward with this new iteration. And that is that the use or application of the proven safety countermeasures should be connected to a data-driven approach. We don't want to leave anybody with the impression that that you shouldn't still do some kind of data-based due diligence about how to implement these countermeasures, whether that's on a statewide or a jurisdictional basis. There are lots of different ways to take a data-driven approach. But we just want to make sure that as you as the state and local agency folks on the front lines go forward, we just want to say continue to conduct the appropriate analysis of your safety data, have a good, objective, evidence-based framework for deciding how to go forward. We've already taken information from the CMF clearinghouse to select these proven safety countermeasures, but it never hurts to go back and see if there's new reports and new evaluations available. A lot of the safety research now is starting to get more nuanced, so you can understand the impacts of a particular countermeasure in different environments or different contexts. Rural, urban, high speed, low speed, impacts on different modes. So it's always good to go back to the CMF clearinghouse and see what's new. But then the bottom line is, we'd really like to see the proven safety countermeasures considered, and we think they're viable options for going forward. So before I introduce the new proven safety countermeasures, the 6 new ones, we'd like to do a quick poll to see what kind of experience you all have with the old proven safety countermeasures. So I'm going to ask Anthony to take the screen back here for a moment. And he's going to bring up a poll. Okay.
Yep, we're going to do this poll a little bit different, guys, because of all of the possible answers. The questions exceed GoToWebinar's limits. I have posted in the chat the URL, which you can see up on the screen. Straw poll me /15268074. It's a free online polling solution. So if you follow the link on your chat box to this location, and the question is, of the past proven safety countermeasures, which was your personal favorite? Left and right turn lanes at two-way stop-controlled intersections, back plates with retroreflective borders, corridor access management, yellow change interval, roundabouts, longitudinal rumble strips and stripes along two-lane highways, median barrier, safety edge, enhanced delineation and friction for horizontal curves, medians and pedestrian crossing islands in urban and suburban areas, pedestrian hybrid beacons, road diets, walkways, or safety audits. If I click on results, I should be able to see live, I believe. There we go. The results are coming in. So we're able to see live the results after being voted on. I guess they're ranked in order. Nope, they're ranked in the order they're coming in. So we have one vote for road diets, median and pedestrian crossing islands. Looks like 30% of the votes that are coming in are for longitudinal rumble strips and stripes. We'll give folks a few minutes to get their browser going, or no, not a few minutes, a few seconds, I guess, to get their browser going and get these results in. It's kind of fun seeing these live as they're coming in. Usually we have to wait until all the polling is done. Rumble strips and stripes is still leading the pack with 27%. The second highest is the retroreflective borders. Again, this is what is your personal favorite. There will be a follow-up question about which one your agency is actually doing the most of. Yay, road safety audits, 2 votes. So things are pretty split. We have, one vote for several things along the different categories. We have a higher number for the longitudinal stripes. Back plates, roundabouts, road safety audits, and an even split amongst some of the others.
Very nice. Got some lonely ones there too.
Yeah, I got some that, one vote here and there. There's a few that I guess people aren't doing as much. Walkways, safety edge, median barrier. All right, let's close this one down, and I'm going to post the next one into the chat, which is the same question, but rather than which one is your favorite, it is phrased which was the most successful implemented in your jurisdiction. So the same responses, but rather than your personal favorite, which is the one that your jurisdiction is implementing instead. So again, the URL is in the chat pod. Do this in your browser, and I will show the results so we can see these live as they're coming in. Little interactive presentations. Jeff, between these two, do you usually see similar results, or is there's like this one's my favorite, but my agency is doing this one over here? Does that happen often, or how does this usually play out?
Yeah, it actually does. So what we have seen is that what people feel strongly about personally has been different than what their agency has had the most success with. So
interesting.
Not yet sure what to make of that. I mean, these are obviously unscientific polls, but
Sure.
I think there's probably some lessons to be learned here that some of this about what we can be most successful with as an agency may speak to funding. It may speak to what kind of resistance or reluctance might be present within an agency or by your customers. But then what's my favorite might be based on what I wish we were doing more of, what I think could make the biggest difference in improving safety in my community. So this is interesting.
Yeah, so it looks like back plates and the longitudinal rumble strips are the two that are most effective whereas the favorite was the well, I guess it was the back plates as well, but more on the rumble strips between the two. So that these are similar, but a slightly different mix.
But I think that we see
them.
some differences. Yeah, some differences as you get down the list, though. I think
as you get down the list, yeah, as you get down the list, they change some. All right, so I'll give you the presentation screen again.
All right. All right, am I back?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, so this is where the drum roll comes in, introducing the new Proven Safety Countermeasures version 3.0. So as I mentioned earlier, we've got 6 new countermeasures that we are promoting through this updated initiative. They are, in order of how I will present them today, the systemic application of multiple low-cost countermeasures at stop-controlled intersections. That's a mouthful, and I promise you all, we tried to come up with something shorter and snappier that could still convey that, and we were not successful. So I apologize for that one being a long and kind of complicated one, but I think within the technical community, most of us will understand that. The second one, reduced left turn conflict intersections, which is actually a couple of different varieties of our LATSA that I'll talk more about. Number 3, roadside design improvements at curves, which is a little bit different approach to how we've been looking at improving horizontal curve safety. Number 4, leading pedestrian intervals at signalized intersections. Number 5, local road safety plans. And number 6, US Limits 2, which is a tool, an expert-based tool to set posted speed limits. So let's start with the proven safety countermeasures for intersections. And just to quickly review, this is the entire package of proven safety countermeasures for intersections. So we've got the 5 that we alluded to in the survey there: left and right turn lanes, back plates with retro borders, corridor access management, yellow change interval, and roundabouts. So those are the 5 that we've been promoting since 2008 and 2012 that I think most of you are very familiar with. And just to say that, you know, Florida was a pioneer on several of these. You know, the back plates with retro borders, Florida had already standardized their signal specs and standard plans to use the retro border back plates even before we had rolled out that proven safety countermeasure with the update in 2012. So, you know, Florida was one of the states that we were showing as a champion of that countermeasure back in the day. So thank you all for being a part of that. Corridor access management, you know, no question, Florida's got one of the most robust access management programs. And so another case where Florida was a great inspiration for bringing this to a national level. And then, you know, on the flip side, roundabouts. Roundabouts is something that I know Florida has made tremendous progress on in recent years. But considering that roundabouts were on the original list of proven safety countermeasures, they were retained for the 2012 list. You know, we've been promoting roundabouts for a very long time. And it's great to see that roundabouts have started to really come into their own in Florida. And now, of course, we've added the 2 new countermeasures for intersections that I mentioned on that list. So let's talk about the first one, the systemic application of multiple low-cost countermeasures at stop-controlled intersections. This is basically more about low-cost treatments, effective low-cost treatments packaged together and deployed in as many intersection locations as possible. So we're talking about a magnitude of hundreds, if not thousands of intersections to get this package of enhanced signing and marking treatments. This is a strategy that at its base relies on the cost economy and treatment saturation of doing it on this widespread basis. So it's really about getting it out there in as many locations as possible based on a data-driven risk assessment, and then looking at the effect that it has on the bottom line. So when you're treating, hundreds or thousands of intersections, in turn, you are addressing thousands or tens of thousands of crashes. And so that can really start to have a tremendous impact on a bottom line. Now, there are some practical limits. What the evaluations have found is that this approach is best suited for intersections with under 20,000 ADT total entering traffic. Okay, so to put it at the very busy intersections, well, when you think about it, 20,000 ADT total entering, there's a decent chance that that's probably going to be signalized, or maybe is in need of some other type of treatment that's not just stop control. So, this is not a surprising finding, but it is something to be aware of. One of the most significant takeaways from the evaluation of this approach is the huge benefit cost ratio that it produces. So with an average cost of about $6,000 per intersection, we're getting 12-to-1 benefit cost results in terms of reducing crashes and reducing injuries and fatalities. So it's a huge benefit. You don't often see that kind of benefit cost ratio come through, even for safety projects. So we think this is definitely something that everyone should be doing more of. Talk a little bit more about the evaluation results. This evaluation was conducted through a pooled fund study on low-cost safety improvements. So we've got a couple dozen states participating in this pooled fund, helping to fund it and prioritize the study topics. For this evaluation, South Carolina was a pioneer here with advancing this treatment. And they did over 2,000 intersections by the time they were finished. And they did it in 3 waves of about 700. So the pooled fund study was able to evaluate the effectiveness using that first wave. They had 434 treated sites with 568 reference sites spread out across the state of South Carolina. This was a true statewide effort, unlike anything that we've seen before. The evaluation included your conventional 2x2, 3-leg and 4-leg, as well as some 4x2, so 4-lane by 2-lane, both 3-leg and 4-leg sites. We had a range of 3 to 5 years, both before and after. And the most significant takeaway here is the crash modification factor using empirical based evaluation, 0.899 reduction in fatal and injury crashes. So, not the biggest CMF ever, okay, but again, considering the very low cost and how quickly you can implement these packages of low-cost treatments, this doesn't require land acquisition. It generally can be done with expedited environmental clearances, if any. And so you can have this out there very quickly, very inexpensively, and by putting it out there on a large jurisdictional-wide basis, you can have a great impact on driving down fatal and injury crashes. This is an example of one of the template plans that South Carolina produced and that we've featured in several of our publications on this practice. So what you'll see here is basically oversized, doubled up advanced warning signs, oversized, doubled up stop signs, additional warning or advisory plaques, occasionally using flashing beacons. And so there's several different ways to put these packages together. So it's not to say that one size fits all, but definitely it's about how many low-cost treatments can we put together in a way that makes the most sense for us, and how can we get those out there in as many intersections as possible. So this is a great way to work your strategic highway safety plan to try to meet your goals for driving down intersection fatalities and injuries. It's a great way to get get some experience with a systemic approach to safety using HSIP program funds, and it can dovetail with other contracting methods that are still innovative in some states. So what they did in South Carolina was actually do it as a design build contract. I know Florida's got a lot of experience with innovative contracting methods, but this does not have to be the standard design bid build approach. And so to have a design build contract that is statewide, like they did in South Carolina, that was an innovative way to do it. And now we're even seeing other states. Missouri just won a Roadway Safety Foundation Award back in the fall of 2017 for work that they're now doing, where they're saying, hey, we're not even going to do the design. We're going to do some preliminary data analysis, and we're going to put out for bid you tell us as the design build team which locations you could treat for this much money and get the biggest bang for the buck. So we're seeing systemic definitely continue to evolve here. The second intersections countermeasure is the reduced left turn conflict intersections. These are the median U-turn and the restricted crossing U-turn, and I'll talk about both of those separately. But what they both have in common is these are intersection geometric designs that change how left turn movements are handled at the intersections. The basic idea with these and with all innovative intersections is to simplify and reduce or modify the conflict points related to turning. And both of these have proven safety and operational benefits. So, you know, this is one of those great ideas that can truly reduce congestion, reduce delay, and make your intersection safer. Just a quick look at your basic conflict point diagram comparing a conventional 2x2 to their equivalent median U-turn and restricted crossing U-turn. You can see how the number of crossing conflict points are substantially reduced with each of these designs. That's obviously one of the secret ingredients of the recipe that makes these so much safer. And then the bottom line here for improving safety performance, where the median U-turn can decrease fatal and injury crashes by 30%, and the restricted crossing U-turn can decrease fatal and injury crashes by over 50%. So 54% decrease there. So tremendous designs for addressing severe crashes at intersections. So what makes these two a little bit different from one another? Let's start with the median U-turn. So with the median U-turn, the major route and the minor route both still allow through movements. Those do not change. But what can change is that the major route left turns, instead of allowing direct lefts at that main intersection, are now handled by downstream U-turns followed by right turns. Using that same U-turn is optional for the minor route. It can be done when that left turn demand is in the intermediate to higher range, but it's not always done that way. And here's one of the cases where the signal phasing and timing advantages has a tremendous benefit across the board. So it's not just about the benefits to moving vehicles. It's got higher capacity, shorter signal cycle lengths, reduce the delay, reduce the queuing because you're servicing traffic more frequently throughout the hour. But it also can benefit the pedestrians that use this intersection. So, I know Florida has some large intersections, and I know that you guys have challenges with pedestrian clearance times. Now, imagine if you had shorter crossings, but yet you could still handle the traffic demand that exists there. So you can reduce the amount of time needed for the pedestrian clearance. You can split it up into two-phase crossings, because now instead of having a single, a dual, or a triple left turn lane, you've got some median space there where pedestrians can wait comfortably and have it work as a two-stage crossing. And you can service not only the traffic more frequently, but you can service the pedestrians more frequently. So it can be much more convenient for a pedestrian to cross that intersection because they're going to get that walk mode more often, and it's going to last longer. So it can be a very beneficial treatment for pedestrians as well. Now, the restricted crossing U-turn is a little bit different. So on this one, the major route movements are unaffected. It's the minor route movements that are affected. So no longer from the minor approaches would traffic be able to continue through the intersection or make a direct left turn. So the minor route approaches are all forced to turn right and then use a downstream U-turn to come back and either complete the through movement or complete that left turn and continue past the intersection. Now, these have so far been very popular along high-speed, divided, 4-lane highways, where, you know, these would be the class of highways that we would normally refer to as expressways, where you still have at-grade intersections, but you've also got high-speed, high-volume conditions on the main line. Very effective, as I mentioned before, 54% reduction in severe crashes. They introduce a little bit of adverse travel, but because it's easier to split the decision-making process up, a driver on that minor route approach only has to decide, do I have a gap and is it safe to make a right turn, and then make any necessary lane changes to get into that U-turn bay, as opposed to having to say, can I cross the approaching traffic to my left? Is there anybody in that median? Is there anybody coming from the far right? Those are locations that can be very difficult for motorists to judge the speed of closing gaps, the speed of oncoming traffic. Those medians typically tend to be very, very wide, and they don't always have good channelization or signing to tell motorists what to do. So this is a way it simplifies everything about these intersections. And, you know, it's to be honest about these intersections, these are locations where we probably didn't want an intersection there in the first place. And we would have liked to have avoided that if it were possible, either through building an interchange or an overpass, or just closing the intersections completely. But that's not always possible. And so this is a way where we can still provide access to all of the development, all of the parties that live and work and have things happening along the minor route, and not cut them off, but yet have a safer intersection. So I'm going to pause there for 1 minute and just see if we have any questions so far on the intersections proven safety countermeasures.
We do. Before you got to the countermeasures, you were talking about an initial list of 31 possible countermeasures that were considered, and then it was pared down to the 6 new ones. Is that
correct?
List of 31 available anywhere? So just kind of for consideration to look at, to get ideas out of?
We have not made that we have not published that list. I would have no problem sharing the list of what we provide, of what we considered with someone, but we haven't published it. You know, it hasn't been vetted for that purpose. I can tell you that it had everything from some of the other things that were on the list that weren't selected ultimately, like intersection collision warning system, sinusoidal rumble strips, green painted bike lanes. So we had a lot of things. We had some things that were really kind of cutting edge and maybe not quite ready for a proven safety countermeasures level yet. But yeah, if there's interest in knowing more about that list, I can go back and make sure that it's okay that we share that.
Yeah, that'd be great. We can post it as a resource on the webpage of the, I guess, unproven safety countermeasures, or, you know, just make it sound like it's not official, but this is just kind of things to consider and, you know, brainstorm about. And that seems like that would be a good thing to have.
Yeah, the other part of this too is I think this is the first time somebody's asked that question, but you know, one of the considerations with including a countermeasure in this initiative is, you know, where are we at nationally with where a particular countermeasure is at? You know, how is it already used a lot? Is it not used a lot? You know, is there a good chance that if we choose it, we can be successful in making progress with it? So, you know, some of it is subjective. You know, we try to be thoughtful about making those determinations. But those are the kinds of things that we talk about when we're deciding, ultimately getting down to this list.
Yeah, I like it because oftentimes you get to an intersection when you're doing a safety evaluation and, you can't come up with anything other than this is just a busy intersection. So having a list of it's like a prompt list. I think maybe rather than a list of unproven countermeasures, if we call it a, possible countermeasure prompt list, just think of these ideas. That might not be a bad way of presenting that information.
Sure.
So there was a question about or I guess a comment when we were doing the polls about the backplates. Just to kind of point out that the success is not the same as most common. So just, backplates are very common, but someone is wondering about how well they actually reduce crashes. That's one that I know around the office we've used before in evaluating some locations for improvements, and backplates, I think off the top of my head, has a 15% reduction of all crashes at an intersection. And that's always to me seemed a little bit high despite the high number of stars. So, the effectiveness of some countermeasures, it's the difference between how common and how effective they are.
True. Yeah, you're correct, Anthony, about the CMF for the backplates is 15% reduction in total crashes at a signalized intersection, and that CMF is for adding the retro border to an intersection that already has backplates. Okay, so this is about squeezing a little bit of extra out of the backplates that already exist. Interesting fact is that we don't have a CMF for adding backplates at an intersection where there weren't any. So, there's some judgment call there. If you're adding retro backplates to an intersection where there weren't any backplates to begin with, I think it's reasonable to say, well, I'm going to use the 15% reduction and see how that math comes out. But technically, that the effectiveness is about adding the border to an existing backplate.
Interesting. Yeah. The countermeasure for the multiple low-cost improvements, is that better suited, you would say, for rural or urban locations?
They differentiated in the study that was done in the pooled fund, both rural and urban conditions. And there were definitely some benefits on both sides. I think in terms of where you would expect locations where you maybe don't have a whole lot of enhanced signing and marking, my intuition would be we probably have more of that in the rural environment anyway. So, I think that would be a logical starting point. But it all depends. You start with the data analysis. You determine what intersection characteristics are associated with the crashes, and then look for the intersections with those characteristics, and see what you've got. But it is a practice that can be both for rural and urban. We are promoting the stop-controlled version of this because we think it has more universal appeal across the country and across all different sizes and types of agencies. But there is also a version of this for signalized intersections that was also evaluated by the pooled fund. So if you're an urban agency and your concern maybe is more signalized intersections, there's probably still a version of this out there for you.
And the final question I have here, kind of as a follow-up to that, is maybe not only rural locations, but also local roads would likely be good candidates for these as well. Would FDOT be able to pay for the installation of those, or would the locals be responsible for that, and perhaps FDOT can provide the materials?
Well, so obviously I can't speak for FDOT, but I can tell you that elsewhere this has been an HSIP eligible project. And so, if FDOT and our FHWA division office in Tallahassee would like to get more information about how federal funds have been used to do this on local roads, I can facilitate that. But I'm gonna have to duck that one since I can't speak for FDOT.
Sure. But it would be eligible for the HSIP? Because I know that some of the districts in Florida purchase the materials with the HSIP funds, and then typically the locals are the ones that install it. So I guess, I don't know, maybe you don't know the answer to the question, but are the funds also eligible for DOT to do the work off system as well, to install the materials?
Yeah, I think, well, and that is a scenario that state and division offices handle differently from place to place. So I would say that there's certainly precedent for that, and we can share examples with Kevin Burgess in our division office, and he can work with Joe Santos on that. But yeah, I think from the Office of Safety standpoint, we absolutely want states, working with local agencies to give them access to the HSIP funds, to make, to give them opportunities to advance projects that are consistent with what we're promoting. So, I think we would want to find a way to get to yes, if that's possible. Usually the only times when that isn't possible is when there are state statutes that prohibit the use of federal funds on local roads.
Great. That's the last question that we have in the chat regarding the first section.
All right, great. Thanks, Anthony. Then let's go ahead and get into roadway departure. So we have 5 proven safety countermeasures now under the category of roadway departure. 4 of them were on the 2008 and 2012 lists, and we've got the 1 new one. We have longitudinal rumble strips and stripes along 2-lane highways, median barrier, safety edge, enhanced delineation and friction for horizontal curves, and roadside design improvements at curves. So those last 2 obviously are related to one another in the sense that they both address a very high-risk area, that is the curves, but they do have some differences that we'll talk more about. So I just wanted to mention a few things about some of the old countermeasures here. First is to just point out there are still some opportunities to implement rumble strips. Now, I know that in the polls, that was the most popular in both of our poll questions. So, maybe Florida is one of the examples where you guys are very mature on the use of rumble strips and rumble stripes. But in many states, there's a lot of focus on either center line or edge line. And maybe the opportunity in a state where they feel like they have one of those institutionalized would be, let's focus on the other. So let's have both center line and edge line or shoulder rumble. And additionally, there's research going on looking at different rumble strip designs, and in particular, what have been termed the mumble strips. And I alluded to this. This was one of the countermeasures that we considered in that list of 31 were technically what they call sinusoidal rumble strips. And so the idea with those is to see how much the noise, the actual ambient noise from rumble strips can be reduced without compromising their effectiveness of alerting a driver to a drifting condition. And so there's NCHRP research, and other researchers at state universities have started to look at these. So we think that there's probably more information on rumble strips to come. So even something like that's widely accepted and very common, is still continuing to undergo that development. And another thing on safety edge, just to mention that safety edge was it was in our first Everyday Counts initiative. And, but even in spite of that, some states did not make it a standard practice. And so now you see there's a table on this slide here, safety edge crash modification factors. So there's new information based on very robust empirical Bayes evaluation. Again, very good CMFs here. And again, it's a case where the cost is very minimal. The cost of safety edge is, it's a rounding error when you talk about quantities of pavement. And so it's almost free. It's just getting the hardware and getting the contracting community to use it. And so taking that into account with the new CMFs, we think it's always a good time to take another look at those. And so the last two treatments, again, related to horizontal curves, just to point out that the enhanced delineation and friction, that focused mainly on keeping vehicles on the road and in their lane, preferably. The new one, roadside design improvements at curves, addresses the scenario of what happens when they leave the road. So again, this is the roadside design improvements at curves, and this is about improving the roadside, so from the shoulder on out, not so much on the, keeping vehicles on the roadway. So there are three components to this countermeasure. The first is increasing the clear zone at curves, and we'll go into more details here on the next slide, but this is actually something that's recommended by the AASHTO Roadside Design Guide and has been in there for decades. This is a proven way to reduce crashes, and so we just think that it's a good time for people to be reminded that this is out there, it's been out there, and maybe take a fresh look at it. The second is to improve traversability of the roadside. So you start, of course, by looking at your shoulders and seeing if there's any adding or widening of shoulders that might be the first thing to do. But really it's about looking at flatter slopes at curves. And this is one of those cases where, taking a systematic look at the risk factors, we're not saying that you have to use flatter slopes across your entire project. Just look at your curves, right? I mean, if you want to have slightly steeper slopes in the tangent sections, that might be okay, and then flatten it out a little bit at the curves where we know there's a higher risk of runoff road. And then the last component to this one is reconsidering when to install barrier. We know that there are now more choices for roadside barrier, some that are designed to be less severe, and so this might be another chance for states to take a look at where they are using these systems. So let's take another look at that first component, increasing the clear zone. So if you go into the roadside design guide and you look at that table 3-2, you'll find that there's been a horizontal curve adjustment factor in there for a very long time. And basically what you'll see there is anywhere from a 10 to 50% increase in the calculated desirable clear zone on the outside of a curve. So what we're saying here is that if we can just focus on the curves and just try to get a slightly more generous clear zone based on the curvature and the design speed, that by itself could help you avoid a vehicle running off the road and hitting a fixed object, hitting a water feature, whatever the case may be, whatever's on the outside of that curve. And so you can see here, just by increasing the clear zone, you can have anywhere from a 22 to 44% reduction in crashes. And again, by targeting the curves, this doesn't have to be a scorched earth approach where an entire corridor is, say, stripped of trees or greatly modified and potentially controversial. So just focus on the high risk areas. Now this is really important because, we've got 3,500 people who are killed in crashes every year in a roadway departure where the first harmful event was hitting a tree or a shrub. So, looking at where can we be more selective with those trees and poles and rigid signposts and so on. That second component is about improving the traversability. So again, focusing on the curves and saying, can we make the curves a little bit flatter than the rest of the roadway? It's funny because even while the vehicle engineering advances have basically become the status quo, so things like electronic stability control, right? So when a vehicle runs off onto a roadside, those systems do help, but unfortunately they don't help on curves because the angle of the trajectory of the vehicle and the angle as it's running off, those systems just can't compensate for the abrupt change. So we know that those systems are working in tangent runoff roads, but not in curves. So this could be the difference between, say, where you've got a 3-to-1 or 4-to-1 slope on the approaching tangent, maybe at the curve, we're going to make that like a 6-to-1. Okay, just a little bit more, a little milder, a little bit more traversable and recoverable, and that can make a big difference right there. And then the last thing is taking another look at whether to be using a roadside barrier at horizontal curves. So just a few things to point out here. That remember that this often cited figure from the roadside design guide about where barriers should be considered or where it's not normally considered. This is based on fill slopes on tangents, okay? Not necessarily curves. So that line that separates where we would normally consider versus not really doesn't reflect the factors that are present at curves or the tendency for vehicles to run off at curves. So it's very possible that barrier can be appropriate on a curve for the same fill slope, even though it wouldn't be normally considered on a tangent. We also know that we do have more flexible barrier systems now, and especially the cable barrier systems, where they are less severe than other types of barrier. They don't generally redirect traffic back onto the roadway as much as they kind of, they more gently kind of redirect them and then kind of hang on to them. And so this might be an area where a state would look at, hey, is a cable barrier system something we should look at more consistent implementation of on curves to address a run off the road problem? So that would be maybe something you would do in cases where you can't address the slope. You also cannot address what fixed objects or other features may be present on the outside of that curve. Okay. So let's pause for a moment here and see if there's any questions on roadway departure.
The only question that popped up here was, and I think we're splitting hairs, increasing the clear zone reduces injury crashes or it reduces all crashes?
Yeah, I think the idea would be to reduce injury crashes, right? That's what we'd obviously be after by increasing the clear zone. I think in the data, you'll probably see a reduction in crashes because now you've got a scenario where maybe people can drive away. You know, maybe it's a crash that never gets reported.
Yeah, that's why I was saying. I think we're splitting hairs because people will run off the road, but they'll be able to continue along the way, and a report will never occur.
Exactly. But to be clear, what we're after with this one, no question, we are targeting the severe crashes when we talk about horizontal curves and the clear zone there.
Yes, that's the only question that came in.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Anthony. So let's go ahead and move into the pedestrians and bicycles. We've got, as with roadway departure, now we have 5 countermeasures under the ped and bike category. Medians and pedestrian crossing islands in urban and suburban areas, the pedestrian hybrid beacon, road diets, walkways, and now the new one, leading pedestrian intervals. Just to mention that in our current Everyday Counts 4 initiative, if you're familiar with the STEP initiative, the Safe Transportation for Every Pedestrian, that initiative is focusing on improving pedestrian crossings at uncontrolled locations. So unsignalized intersections and mid-block crossings. And as part of that initiative, they are focusing very heavily on the medians and pedestrian crossing islands, the use of the pedestrian hybrid beacon, and road diets. Okay, so this is a good example of how the proven safety countermeasures live on, and actually because there's continued emphasis on improving the ability of people to walk and bike in our communities. You know, there's just more opportunities to continue to promote it, bring more states along, bring more local agencies along, and so we're hoping that STEP initiative gets continued into Everyday Counts 5 and potentially expanded to also address some signalized intersection scenarios. So the leading pedestrian interval is a treatment for signalized intersections. This doesn't have to be the case, but this is normally implemented where an agency would already have pedestrian signalization, but you can obviously implement the LPI as part of retrofitting with pedestrian signalization. The idea with this countermeasure is pedestrians get a walk signal first. So they get a head start into the crosswalk and into the intersection. That head start usually consists of 3 to 7 seconds before vehicles are given their circular green indication. And what this does is it allows pedestrians to establish themselves in the crosswalk before vehicles have the green light to turn left or to turn right. But this treatment originally emerged as a way to overcome the left turn problem. So when you think about it as a motorist, when I'm sitting there waiting at a permissive intersection, a permissive turning intersection, I get the green light. I'm back there by the stop line. I'm probably a little bit far away. And if a pedestrian is crossing from the same direction that I'm coming from, you know, over my left shoulder and to the rear, I may not see them in time. I start my left turn movement. They arrive in the crosswalk at about the same time that I arrive there, and we know how that story ends, unfortunately. So by giving the pedestrian that head start, they can actually be in the crosswalk in my line of sight where I can see them before I start that left turn maneuver. The benefits here are very good. A 60% reduction in those pedestrian vehicle conflicts and crashes at intersections, increased visibility of crossing pedestrians, the reduced conflict between the different modes, and a very pleasant side effect is increased likelihood of motorist yielding. And that's both for the left turns, you know, continuing to yield the right of way to a pedestrian in the crosswalk, as well as traffic who might be turning right. So if a pedestrian is already in the crosswalk, they're more visible, they've asserted their presence in the roadway, and therefore the vehicles must yield to them. And this is always one of those things where, you know, most crosswalk laws are written such that a pedestrian has to be in the crosswalk before it triggers any kind of responsibility on the part of the motorist. Now, that is changing slowly. We are seeing states change their crosswalk laws to try to give the benefit to the pedestrian. But, you know, being a pedestrian and being in the crosswalk, well, people generally don't want to step into the roadway if a car is coming. So it's a little bit of chicken and egg that this helps resolve. We've got guidance on this countermeasure in our handbook for designing roadways for the aging population, which is the latest version of what we used to refer to as the older driver and pedestrian handbook. And there's also guidance in the MUTCD on how to do this properly and consistent with the MUTCD. So we would refer you to those two sources for more information. And that's it for pedestrians. So any quick questions on pedestrians?
Yeah, will the, what was it? Will the countermeasures and the steps be updated when the RFB is reauthorized?
Well, that's optimistic, right? I don't know if the RFB is going to be. I think I appreciate the optimism because I would certainly hope that's true too. I can't say. I don't know. Let's keep our fingers crossed and see what comes. And if it does, I think we would all think that if we had the RFB back on our menu, we would all be thrilled. Was that the only question then, Anthony?
No. Any info on delay caused by deleting pedestrian intervals?
What kind of cost?
Delay.
Delay caused.
Delay caused. Just delay.
Oh, delay caused. Caused. I'm sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
Delay caused. Now let me see. Is there? I don't know if the safety studies looked at that, but I mean that's obviously not something that would be difficult to evaluate in HCS. So I think there can be some delay imposed on the left turning traffic, no question about it. But I think fundamentally it's a matter of equity and whether that's whether the delay of vehicles is more important than the safe crossing of the pedestrians. So yes, it's going to make a difference, particularly at peak periods. But I would say you'd have to do the analysis to know that for sure.
At a recent road safety audit, we had a conversation out in the field. It was a new traffic signal that was skewed, and the designer took the choice of having the shorter pedestrian crossing rather than running it across the side street where the pedestrians are in a better location for visibility. And a leading pedestrian interval is one of the things we were considering at that location when it's actuated. That way you can split the difference at the skewed intersection between having the shorter clearance when pedestrians are not there, but then when a pedestrian is present, allowing the pedestrian to get out in front of the vehicles so that they're not able to turn and get hit by the turning vehicle that would be at speed because of the queue by the time that they get to the crosswalk on the side street.
Right. Interesting.
One more on
that's a good example.
One more on leading pedestrian intervals. I've heard that we need accessible and audible actuators since the deaf listen for, they must have been the blind, since the blind listen for parallel traffic to know when to cross. Is this in the METCD?
The need for, well, the specifics on the what accessible components would be covered by the U.S. Access Board and by the draft PROAG, the public right-of-way accessibility guidelines. But yes, most crossings now should be equipped with accessible pedestrian signals, APS. So yeah, that would include the audible component, audible message, and so that's I think have become the norm by now in most places.
One more question, and again, you don't speak for FDOT, but it's a question related to them. Going back to the clear zones from the last section, is the FDOT's control zones the new construction criteria for curbs, intersections, etc., fulfilling the clear zone requirements?
Yeah, that I am not able to answer. I'm not familiar with the control zone concept.
Okay.
So I think maybe let's tag that as a question to have FDOT weigh in on.
And someone from DOT chimed in and said that FDOT is developing guidelines and best practices for the installation of leading pedestrian intervals, and they will be incorporated in the TEM, the Traffic Engineering Manual.
Wonderful. Great. Thank you for mentioning that. That's good to know. Good deal. All right. Well, then let's go ahead and move on.
Okay.
So our last category of proven safety countermeasures is the cross-cutting strategies. Now, this is one of the tweaks that we made with this latest iteration. One of the things we heard as we evaluated the initiative was that people really missed having something in the proven safety countermeasures like road safety audits back in 2008. So RSAs were one of the first proven safety countermeasures. When we updated the initiative in 2012, we focused on really what would be considered, I guess, I like to call them the widgets, the things we can make, the things we can build, as opposed to the processes or procedures or best practices. But what we heard overwhelmingly was, hey, we liked RSAs. It gave us something to work with people who aren't the engineers. It gave us a chance to work with law enforcement, education, communities. And so they wanted those things back. They wanted that element added back in. So as a result, we've chosen 2 new cross-cutting strategies. And by cross-cutting, we mean these are beneficial to intersections, roadway departure, and pedestrians and bicycles. So we kind of orient ourselves around our focus areas, our technical focus areas. And so these are cross-cutting and can be beneficial to any of those. Now, I don't need to tell you guys how valuable road safety audits are, because I know that you guys do road safety audits frequently. And so I'm sure you can attest to the value of cross-cutting strategies. And so we hope that, that you'll find one or both of these new ones also appealing. They are local road safety plans and U.S. limits too. So local road safety plans is a strategy to address local road safety, obviously. We think this is important because we know that local roads experience 3 times the fatality rate of, for example, the interstate highway system. So we know this is something that's an important dimension of road safety in the United States. And, you know, we just have so many local partners. There's so many cities and counties and townships, and there's so many local jurisdictions. It's obviously hard to reach all of them and reach all of them consistently. So we think local road safety plans is something that can be done, you know, at a state level, at a regional level, say within an MPO or within a rural planning organization. And this is something that can both feed the state's strategic highway safety plan or be fed by the state's strategic highway safety plan. So to be more specific, the local road safety plans are coordinated plans that basically lay out the framework for reducing road fatalities and injuries on local roads within a specific jurisdiction. So basically, they're like mini strategic highway safety plans for a city or for a county or for a specific jurisdiction. We recognize, as with SHSPs, that local road safety plans need to be flexible, but we want them to utilize the 4 E's approach, so engineering, enforcement, education, emergency response. Those are the primary road safety stakeholders that we want to make sure have a voice in the crafting of a local road safety plan, just like the state. You know, these plans lay out the basic safety goals, objectives, and key emphasis areas. And so, you know, whether it's to say, okay, we're going to focus on rural intersections in our jurisdiction, or we're going to focus on impaired driving in the urban environment in our jurisdiction, or we're going to focus on both of those things. You know, that this is for the stakeholders of that jurisdiction to help craft what their goals, objectives, and emphasis areas are. The benefits to having a local road safety plan, obviously the first is enhanced safety awareness. So you're creating, you know, the group of stakeholders who are going to take that safety message out into the community and hopefully raise awareness about the most critical safety issues. Establishing and sustaining partnerships. So you're bringing together the people from those 4 E's. They get to know each other, they start to talk, they ask questions of one another, they understand each other's roles better and what resources they can bring to bear. You know, we've seen that play out many times now at the state level as strategic highway safety plans have been created and updated now going back to 2005. And now we'd like to see that play out on the local level. Great opportunities for people to collaborate within, you know, a larger jurisdiction. So, you know, within a county or within an MPO, you know, you can bring together the municipal, the county, the tribal, and the state and federal entities to figure out, okay, who can take the lead on this? Where can we go after funding? Who can actually implement, and that sort of thing. Obviously, taking a data-driven approach and identifying the target crash types and focusing on the injury and severe crashes. And then it's just a chance to leverage safety funds. There have been cases where, you know, we've seen jurisdictions partner up where jurisdiction A maybe will do the grant writing or the application and some of the engineering, and then jurisdiction B will actually do the construction for both jurisdictions. So you know, there's partnerships that can emerge that maybe are not things that you've tried before. And then again, as a complement to the state strategic highway safety plan, And we've seen this play out in a couple different ways. The most common has been that the local road safety plan entities would kind of start with the state strategic highway safety plan and see which elements are present in their jurisdiction. But now we're starting to see it kind of turned upside down, where a state says, let's go out and let's do these local road safety plans, and then let's take all of those LRSPs and roll them up into the state strategic highway safety plan. So kind of a bottom-up approach. So we're really excited to see how that plays out. I think it's a really interesting way to do it, and I think it's a way that could really give the locals a much stronger voice in crafting the state level priorities and going from there. The steps in the local road safety plan development process, pretty much the same as the strategic highway safety plan. So, you bring together your team, you get the data, you have it analyzed, you discuss it, you ask your questions, and you sort through the different ways that you can interpret the data, choose your emphasis areas, link that to strategies, prioritize those strategies, and then go out and make it happen. The second cross-cutting strategy is U.S. Limits 2. And as I mentioned, this is an expert level based tool to help a jurisdiction set posted speed limits. So within the whole speed limit framework, there's a few different things to be aware of. First is that you've got basic rule and statutory speeds, and those are things that are either in the state statutes or in the vehicle code that say on these roads or on these streets, this is going to be the de facto speed limit, even if there's not a sign posted. Everywhere else are speed zones where we actually set posted speed limits, and that's basically done to inform drivers of what we consider to be a reasonable and safe operating speed under favorable conditions, right? So as the practitioners setting the speed limits, we know there are a lot of caveats that come with setting speed limits, and unfortunately that doesn't always elicit the same response from drivers. So U.S. Limits 2 basically is guidance for setting speed limits. It supplements what is in the MUTCD, which in the MUTCD there's guidance and options, recommended practices for speed studies and for setting speed limits. The MUTCD mentions the 85th percentile speed, but it also mentions other factors that can be considered, including road characteristics, pace speed, development, parking, ped bike, and crash history. So U.S. Limits 2 actually takes those characteristics into account and creates an interface that allows a user to go through this process consistently and systematically. So you can make sure that you're conducting the process the same each and every time that you use this system. Now this is important because we want speed limits, posted speed limits, to be enforceable and to be credible. And having a tool that can consider all these factors equally meaning from one study to the next, is going to be very important. This tool was FHWA supported and funded by FHWA and AASHTO through the NCHRP, Project 3-67. So this is a product of a strong partnership between TRB, AASHTO, and Federal Highways. So it's a web-based tool. You log in, you create your user account, and then all of your studies live on the server of US Limits 2. You can always print them out, but you can always go back and access them later too if you need to call them back up. It's based on what we call a decision rule system, so it's a flowchart-based approach. So as you go through and enter your data, the decision rule system is going through a flowchart of yes/no scenarios, and it walks through that decision rule system, and then will produce a recommendation that practitioner would then use to make their decision. As I mentioned earlier, this tool allows you to be consistent in how you do your speed studies, and it provides a written, documented basis for credible use for enforcing speed limits. So when you go back and you think about ultimately what are the things that can happen as you're enforcing posted speed limits? Well, there might be a time when you have to justify your speed study and your posted speed limit setting in court. This provides you with a very credible basis for how you arrived at that. We've seen that this is also helpful in responding to public and political concerns because it does allow you to factor in the things that the MUTCD mentions, so things like development and parking and PEDs and crash history and so on. So just a couple testimonials that we've heard from people who have used this. Georgia has used it to complement the speed studies that they do they're now up to nearly 500 speed limit studies where they've used US Limits 2 to help make sure that their speed studies were being conducted properly. And we also hear that US Limits 2 helps take out a lot of the emotion and politics that come along with speed limits. So, being able to say, here's the NCHRP report that explains this system. Here's how I put the data into the system, and here's how it walks through the decision points. This is a lot easier to walk people through than just saying, well, we went out there and we took a 85th percentile speed, and that's just the way it is. So any questions about the cross-cutting countermeasures?
There's a comment about the 85th percentile speed, which you mentioned right at the end. In the experience of some folks that have used US Limits 2, it seems like no matter what inputs they put, it just always comes out to be the 85th percentile speed. Any comments on that?
No, I've seen cases where I've used US Limits 2 and I've put in data that I thought would I expected a different outcome. So I've had the same experience, but I've also had cases where it did recommend the 50th percentile. So without knowing the exact scenario here, I would just say that I've had the same experience. And, I fully expect that US Limits 2 is going to continue to evolve as we get more feedback from the practitioner community. So I would say that if you can share that feedback with us, and I'll share the contacts for each of these countermeasures here momentarily, that would be helpful.
Sure.
And I think also, that if people hadn't seen it, late last year, the National Transportation Safety Board published a special investigation report on speed, and one of their recommendations was to advance the use of US limits as a way to set better speed limits. So, I think again, it's going to continue to be a major issue for us. And so again, that the feedback from the practitioner community would be very valuable.
Okay. Back to the pedestrian. There was a question about the hawks.
Okay.
When asked the question, why install a hawk instead of a signal? I mean, I understand a beacon versus a signal. You've got warrants and everything, but functionally, would it not be simpler for the motoring public rather than having to learn about this new, strange traffic signal that looks like a railroad crossing sign? Why not just install a pedestrian actuated signal that's green all the time, similar to what's done at fire stations?
Right. Sure. No, that question has come up many times. And I think, Anthony, you kind of touched on the first hurdle, and that is if it's not a warranted location, then, that becomes difficult. Okay. So, or there may be other reasons where you've got a corridor where dropping another signal into the mix could present unique problems that the pedestrian hybrid beacon doesn't necessarily. So I think the first obstacle, no question, is whether that traffic signal is warranted. The second is, I think the credibility of the device. So if the traffic signal is green all the time, would drivers start to get conditioned to almost not even see a change to a yellow and red, as opposed to a dark device that's clearly associated with the crosswalk, which, you know, only lights up when somebody presses the button. So, you know, I think every state, I think, has to kind of explore this question in their own way, because you've got your own practices and your own state statutes concerning traffic control devices and signals. But I would say that I think the pedestrian hybrid beacon is still very much underused. And so because it's new, I think there's still this tendency to be reluctant about trying it.
Are you aware of any studies that someone has done kind of some A/B testing in different areas, or one state went one way and one state went another, and which one is working better, kind of using a signal as a beacon versus a hawk?
The focus has been mainly on just evaluating the hawk, you know, the efficacy of the hawk itself. And again, because the hawks have been used in locations that weren't warranted for a signal, you know, it has made it difficult to compare those two scenarios. In other words, if I say I can't install a signal because it's not warranted, it would be hard to say, you know, find that data set of signals installed where they weren't warranted, you know?
Yeah. No, it's an interesting question that they pose. I mean, because it's almost like they're trying to say, well, a hawk is warranted, but we don't like hawks, so let's use a signal instead to operate in a similar fashion. It's an interesting thought.
Well, I do get the perspective of, you know, this is a known and widely understood device, that being a traffic signal. So rather than introduce something new, I get where that question comes from. I mean, that, you know. Anything else?
There are no other questions in the chat at the moment.
Okay, well, let's go ahead, and I just have a couple more slides before closing out here. So just to let everybody know what our next steps are going to be, ours being the safety program here at Federal Highways. So we've spent the last few months baselining the current status of each of the new proven safety countermeasures. So we're going to, as we have in the past, track the progress of implementation of these 6 new proven safety countermeasures. So we've got that baseline finished, and so we know kind of everybody's starting line. And what we've asked people to do is, you know, spend the next couple of years trying to advance progress in your state with these 6 new proven safety countermeasures. We've decided that we're going to ask for progress updates every 6 months. So at the end of June, we will send a note out to our division offices and say, hey, can you tell us, has there been any progress in your state on the 6 proven safety countermeasures? And then we'll do that again in January of 2019. So every 6 months, and I expect that we'll do that probably at least for a couple of years or until we see the progress kind of starts to slow down and maybe we reach that point where we're not going to see much more progress. So we really want to see people moving these forward. Ultimately, we'd love to see everybody get institutionalized on all of them. You know, we know that's not realistic, but you know, just to do your best to advance them along. This is not a super formal effort in the same way that Everyday Counts is. So Everyday Counts usually is worked through your State Transportation Innovation Council, and there's usually resources available both from Federal Highways and the state, and you know, it's a big deal. This is important, but we're not going to pin people down and say, okay, set your goals and we're going to track you and you know, gosh, you really need to meet your goals and all that. This is just going to be, hey, do your best. We know that people want to improve safety in their communities, and we think these are going to be good ways to do that. And we'd love it if you could report that you're making progress. Now, we are going to use the Everyday Counts implementation scale because we think people are familiar with this now. So Everyday Counts has been around now for 8 years. People know it. They understand these different stages of implementation. So we're going to borrow this scale, and that's what we've done with the baselining. We asked people, where are you at the end of 2017 on this scale, ranging from not implementing to institutionalized. And then hopefully we can see people, progressing up a stage or two over the course of the next couple of years. I want to mention that we have totally updated our website. So now when you go to our Proven Safety Countermeasures webpage, you will see all of the Proven Safety Countermeasures shown there, all 20 of them, not just the 6 new ones. That was another tweak that we made, that people felt like, hey, we feel like you're abandoning the old ones. You move on to the new ones, and like, we still want to work on this one. And that's great. By all means, if you hadn't done anything on Safety Edge, we are there to help you advance Safety Edge. If you're just getting into roundabouts, we're there to help you move roundabouts forward. So all 20 are on there now. We've updated the one-page flyers with the basic information, the effectiveness, the description, all that good stuff. These are designed so that you can print these out on your own color printer and hand them out locally, or hand them out at your project meeting, or whatever you need them for. So, they were designed with that in mind. And by all means, if you ever want to take this and put your logo on it, or hey, can I take this picture or this text or whatever, that icon, absolutely. You can just say, hey, I want to borrow such and such, or I want to use such and such in a new brochure for my city or my county, and you go for it. All right. We love that. We love getting those kind of inquiries. On that website, we also have our rollout webinar from back in the fall. So even though I'm doing a live session for all of you today, if you ever want to direct somebody else to that webinar, I know this one's also being recorded, but that's up there. And then as you click on each icon, it'll also give you a hyperlink to where you can find more information elsewhere in our website about that treatment. So, you might click on the one-page flyer for roundabouts and say, boy, I wish I knew more. And then you click on for more information, and it'll take you to our roundabouts webpage. Okay. So we've tried to make it easier to find more information. And then for the contacts from my office, for each of the different categories of countermeasures, or for the specific countermeasures, as we mentioned at the beginning, I handle the intersections program. On the roadway departure countermeasures, Mena Yassin, who actually is ex-FDOT. Some of you might remember Mena. And then Kathy Satterfield. For pedestrian and bicycle, Tamara Redman. And then for the cross-cutting, for local road safety plans, it's Rosemarie Anderson. For road safety audits, it's Becky Crow. And for U.S. Limits 2, it's Guan Zhu. So you'll have this information, our email addresses, and our phone numbers in case you ever want to contact any of us. So that's it for my full presentation, Anthony. I know we've got plenty of time for more questions.
Yeah, there's no questions in the chat at the moment. Did you want me to put in the last of the 2 polls?
Yes, that would be great. Thank you.
Okay, so we have 2 additional polls that are going to be done in the same fashion as the last ones. These are straw polls asking about which countermeasure you are most interested in. That has been posted in the chat. I will make myself the presenter so that we can see the results of those as they are coming in. And there we go. So which of the new proven safety countermeasures are you most excited about? The systemic application of multiple low-cost countermeasures at stop-controlled intersections, that is a mouthful. Reduced left-turn conflict intersections, roadside design improvements at curbs, leading pedestrian intervals, local road safety plans, or U.S. Limits 2. Let's see the results of that as they are coming in. looks like my favorite is winning so far. The reduced left turn conflicts at intersections.
Yeah, and while people are voting, I'll just say that I know that, you know, Florida has been developing an intersection control evaluation policy. Alan Eller-Foley in the central office has been the lead on that. You've probably heard or seen presentations from Alan and his team. And I believe they're rolling out some training on ICE this year. And so this is going to be another great avenue to getting more of these reduced left turn conflict intersections implemented, because the ICE policy kind of has, you know, it incorporates explicit safety analysis, and it walks people through using operational techniques and safety analysis techniques. It really kind of gets you to, hey, this is the best intersection, and you really should think very strongly about this.
I posted the last of the poll questions in the chat. It's going to be the same results, but instead of which one you're most excited about, it will be which of the new 6 countermeasures would you like more in-depth information about first. So if we were to follow up with webinars or what other information, what can FHWA do first to help you?
And when we asked this question for the rollout webinar back in the fall, the one that garnered the most votes was the systemic application. And so just this past January, we did a webinar through our focus state initiative. So we had we mainly focus on focus states for intersections, of which Florida is one, and then opened it up also to other audiences. And so we've got a recorded webinar on the systemic application too that we're going to get posted to our Proven Safety Countermeasures website here very soon.
Yeah, it looks like our audience today is most interested in the local road safety plans.
Great. That's exciting. And like I said, you can expect to see a lot more coming on the reduced left turn conflict intersections because of the ICE policy. So.
And the ICE trainings are occurring in March through May.
Okay, great, thank you.
First time I read U.S. limits, because it's spelled out all in caps, I read it as U.S. limit S2. I'm like, what? U.S. limits 2.
Maybe the 2 should be like a subscript or something, huh?
Yeah, superscript or subscript. There's a few in the chat that are posting that they're having issues accessing the polls. I mean, this is why we usually do it through the GoToWebinar window. We were getting halfway decent responses, but depending on your organization's policy with cookies or just your security settings, these straw poll things don't work every time. So just kind of bear with us, and if you're able to answer the question, refresh the page when you get in there and see if it lets you. If not, then thank you for trying. We appreciate it. We're seeing the responses in here. Still local road safety plans. There's no other questions that are coming in the chat. I wanted to remind everyone that the presentation, the actual PDF of the presentation is in the handout pod in the GoToWebinar window. The PDH request form is there as well. The recording of the webinar will be posted on the Tampa Bay Traffic Safety site. Follow the link in the invitation that got you here. And the next webinar has not been finalized as far as the date and topic, but we'll be sending out the flyer that we send out to everyone that is registered to let you know the topic and the date when that is finalized. Dennis, do you have anything to add?
Well, I was going to say about the topics, it will be in April. It's just a matter of finalizing the topic. So
Okay.
stay tuned. Thank you so much for being patient.
Andy, I know since we have a few extra minutes here, I've got the Proven Safety Countermeasures website up on my screen. If I can show it real quick and just give people a glimpse of what that looks like.
Sure, I will make you the presenter. Oh, someone posted in the chat, and it's true. You cannot vote on the window of the presentation that you were watching. You need to open up your own browser window. You know, you can't vote on my screen that I was showing the results on. So the person kind of admitted to the fact that they were trying to vote on my window rather than theirs. So that's, you know, if you're still interested in those polls. Yep, we can see your screen now, Jeffrey.
Okay, great. So when you go to our website, it's actually under under resources. I'm working on getting it slid over here to the initiatives pull down, but you go to the resources and then proven safety countermeasures, and then it brings up all 20 of the proven safety countermeasure icons, the past memoranda that our office issued each time, the link to the recorded webinar, and then if you just click on any of these icons, so you click on Safety Edge, it'll bring you to the one pager. Okay, so the PDF of that is found up here in the left-hand corner in that orange box. And then it says, for more information about this proven safety countermeasure, visit the Office of Safety's Safety Edge website. And you click on that, and it'll take you to the Safety Edge website. So each one of these are hyperlinked to another place in our website to find more information. The EDC, or rather the Safety Edge website, is one that has undergone a total makeover. It's the latest information about Safety Edge, and you know, it's a great website, very clean and user-friendly. So don't expect all of them to be quite this nice, but they're out there. Let me just show you one other one here. Go to roundabouts. So that's the one pager, and then you click on the link, and we've got this whole page on roundabouts. Lots of information on, you know, our informational videos, our informational brochures. We've got brochures on peds and bikes, first responders, rural highways, tribal governments, our outreach and education toolbox, which is quite extensive. So just a lot of great information here on roundabouts. If you're trying to find something from another state, we try to keep this map updated every few months. States that have their own roundabout informational web pages, including Florida, is out there. So, you know, every one of the countermeasures is linked over to another page, and hopefully you can find what you're looking for if you go take a look. All right.
While we're there looking at the webpage, in the presentation, you had a page that showed for each of the topics, this is the person to contact. Is that in here? If you go into a particular topic, there's a, for more information, email this person?
I don't, let me just check and see what we got here. So let's try US Limits 2. So it looks like that's not necessarily the case, Anthony. So yeah, I would definitely keep that slide of our contacts handy. I mean, you can always find us. There's a Office of Safety contact list too, but probably just easier to refer to that slide and go from there.
Okay.
Anthony, this is Dennis. Does that information need to be posted somewhere so everybody has access to it if they want to contact those people?
I mean, it is part of the slide deck, which is
Right.
available through the handout download, and it will also be available
Right.
on the website once it's posted. So yeah, I mean, we will post it.
It will be available that way, but I didn't know if you wanted to do it as a separate document. That's all. No problem. Thanks.
All right. Well, I think I'm good.
Okay. Well, with that, I will end the recording. We'll stay on the line for a few seconds in case anything else comes up. Thank you, everyone, for attending, and we will see you next time. Thank you so much, Jeffrey, for your time. It was a great webinar. I think we had a pretty lively Q&A going back and forth. It's always fun and exciting.
Jeffrey, this is Dennis. I want to thank you also for doing this for us, and it was very interesting. So it was great. Thank you.
Absolutely. You're welcome. And thanks again for asking me. And please let Peter and Rudy know that I appreciate the chance to do it.
Okay. Well, I think Peter was logged in as one of the attendees, so I don't know if he's still on. But,